Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. It is 10 degrees now here in north central Maryland. So I had a little change of plans with my Christmas vacation. Last Friday, so a week ago Friday, I had a delivery in Pennsylvania and I took that in. And then when I came away from the dock and I started my truck up, my truck was throwing all these idiot lights, alarms, and so it derated. So while I was there, I was like, okay, I'll shut it down. I'll turn all the power off, because I had problems with my 2021 Freightliner just throwing a bunch of codes. And so, I thought, okay, I'll shut it down. Well, that didn't work, and I didn't really have a load, so I was like, all right, I'm not too far from Pitts now. I was like, I don't know, 75, 80 miles from Pitts, and I'm like, I'll go up there and just get this in the shop and see what they can do. So I go up to Pitts, and in the meantime, I get a load, but it was an open window kind of thing, and it wasn't going to pick up. I couldn't pick it up until 7 the next morning anyway. And it was going to Michigan, two stop load. So I go up to Pittston, but they wake me up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, of course, to get me in the shop. I go in the shop. They're like, yeah, we can't do anything about this. This is with your DEF system, your DPF. You're going to have to go to a Freightliner dealership. So I reached out to RA, and of course, by this time it was early Saturday morning, and they're like, well, no one's going to be able to see you till Monday. And so I was like, you know what? If I got to wait till Monday to get into a Freightliner dealership, I'm just going to wait at home, because I don't live that far from Pittston. So I'd already dropped my trailer. I reached out to dispatch. I'm like, hey, you're going to have to take this load off of me because I'm derated. And, I could drive at 55 miles an hour, but that was it. So got a couple more hours of sleep, and I headed down to Hagerstown, Maryland. I think my daughter checked for me at the Freightliner dealership in Harrisburg, and they were like way backed up, and they're like, well, we couldn't get to it until at least Thursday. So I went to Hagerstown, excuse me, went to Hagerstown, and they took it in. They got it back to me on Thursday, so that was cool. Everything was covered by warranty. There were just several like sensors, and one of my coolant lines was not working right. It's kind of funny because like all these idiot lights came on at the exact same time, but so they took care of it, and I was able to get my truck back. And so I just basically told my fleet manager, hey, I'm just going to start my vacation early, but I'm going to come out early. So notwithstanding what I said about, like what loads are going to look like over Christmas, I'm probably going to come out next Wednesday, I think. Get back on the road. My plans have kind of changed. I'm probably not going to take on any trainees in January. Nothing to do with the weather or anything, because I don't even know what the weather's going to be like. But I just need to take my wife asked me to take a couple of different periods. And when I have a trainee, I don't like to only go out for like 2 weeks and then somebody needs to go home, whether it's me or the trainee, because that's just I like a little more continuity. And especially with TNT being like 50,000 miles now, it's you just want to get 4 or 5 weeks on the road at a time at least, to kind of like, so you're not spending a whole year together. So yeah, so those are my plans. I mean, nothing crazy. I mean, if you're at Prime, Prime, like fleet managers, safety, have basically been begging people to stay off the roads. And even like shippers and receivers, their folks are staying home. You know, I don't even know what it would be like in some places where it's just super cold. And really where I am, we had a lot of rain, but then mercifully, when the winds did pick up yesterday, the wind blew so freaking hard that it just dried the roads out before the water could actually freeze. So there's a few frozen places, you know, where there were big puddles, but basically the roads in the mid-Atlantic, you know, now once you get north of Harrisburg, there's snow and stuff, but it hasn't been bad. I mean, there are a lot of people with power outages, but yeah, it was just, you know, yesterday was super cold, of course, and I'm not saying it's, oh, look how cold it is where I am. I mean, it's cold everywhere. I mean, Houston was like 15 degrees yesterday, so it's freaking cold everywhere. And it was so cold that my wife and I, we moved our chickens out of their big house into what used to be a smokehouse. I never used it as a smokehouse, but the previous owners did back in the day because they had pheasants. Yeah, they had, like, the guy had like tons of pheasants and pheasant pens and stuff, and he had a smokehouse. So we've used the smokehouse for just utility storage and animals and stuff at different times. But so we moved the chickens into the smokehouse because we can heat that easier. And normally we wouldn't heat for the chickens because they don't usually need external heat. But the building they were in is a little bit drafty, and with it getting just so cold, you know, it's like, and again, this is nothing compared to what it's like in other places. I mean, it was like 0 last night. My nephew lives in Williston, North Dakota. Man, his high temperature yesterday was like -13. So I'm not like, oh, it's so cold here. But we just wanted to make sure the chickens had enough heat to be okay. And so we put a bunch of straw and a little bit of hay down, and yeah. So it's all good. Getting ready for the family to come over. Yeah, so I'll get back on the road. But yeah, I don't care where you are. I mean, I almost feel like people need to be, unless the roads are like clear and dry and there's not a lot of wind, people just got to shut it down. It's too crazy. And you know, I saw a headline in CNN this morning, 15 people have been killed because of this Winter Storm Elliott, and I'm like, no, that's not true. 15 people have been killed because they decided to go out on, you know, on roads that were not safe, and you know, the roads conditions that were worse than their ability to handle it. You know, there was a big freaking pile up on the Ohio Turnpike yesterday in a whiteout. That shouldn't, you know, whiteout conditions when there's snow on the ground and there's heavy, you know, high winds, that's just going to happen, right? That's a part of life. And if you're out in it and you can't handle it, or somebody around you can't handle it, and that's the thing, right? Like, you could be a really good driver and they wipe out in front of you and you can't stop in time. Guess what? That's a preventable accident. You're not going to be charged by the cops for something like that. You know, you're not going to get a ticket, probably. But I guarantee Prime is going to say that you had a preventable. And, you know, that's just how it is. So the easiest way to not get a preventable accident is just, you know, do like my friend Lyle's been doing. Stay in truck stops, you know. You know, like I said, and I heard this from another driver. This is an original thought, but 0 is sometimes the appropriate speed to be going. So, and you see my truck is behind me. The wind was so bad yesterday that I have some big trees in my yard, very, very big trees, and one of them had shed a branch during a tornado last summer, and like dropped on my Sprinter van, and it didn't crush it, but it definitely did a lot of damage to it. And so I was like, and normally I park my truck right next to my Sprinter at home, and I told my wife, I'm like, you know what, I want to move my truck at least out to the end of the driveway And then she was like, why don't you take it down to the grocery store? Because this parking lot is, it says no trucks, but nobody cares. There's another bobtail parked right on the other side of my truck, and I was just bringing some stuff down here to the truck. But a lot of times I park in here with the trailer because it's within walking distance of my house. I drove down because I'm being a soft, but plus I had a bunch of bedding to carry. But yeah, I was just like, I'm gonna move it because I don't want a giant branch crunching my truck. If for no other reason than I do want to get back on the road. But interestingly, I had a good week last week. I think I netted like $580, which is not a lot of money, but I only had one trip because I derated on Friday. So Friday I would have been out I was going to be out until Wednesday, but since I packed it in early because of the problem with the truck, I thought, man, I'll be happy if I break even. And then I got my settlement yesterday. I was like, oh, $580. It's not a bad week when you only do one trip. So, and the trip the trip was like, it was like a $2,000 trip. So I was happy. And my fuel tanks are mostly full. It is kind of weird though that yesterday I was like, man, I gotta, even though my truck's sitting, I was like, I gotta put some anti-gel in my tanks. I went out, I thought I had a couple of bottles, but I didn't, so I just called the local auto parts store. I know these guys have lots of different stuff, and they're like, yeah, we got plenty of it. We'll put it out. And so when I walked in, and that's the nice thing about living in a small town, right? I walk in, there's 4 bottles, because I told them I wanted 2 to use and 2 to put in the truck. There's 4 bottles of anti-gel in a little box, so I didn't even have to, it was easy to carry. I just walk in, I go right up to the counter, I'm like, hey, that's my anti-gel. They're like, oh, okay, and they just ring me up, right? Like that's the nice thing about being in a small town. So I got to go pick up my prime rib here in a little bit at a small town grocery store / meat cutter place, and yeah, it's and I don't love all small towns. I love small towns where there's enough like people and income that businesses survive and thrive, and you can, we've been in this town because, and I hadn't really said much about this, but we moved back to Maryland from PA just because we had a really, really big house, like a big house that we bought back when I was making more money, and we had all our kids at home too. And as the kids got older and moved out and went to college, or I got 2 kids that are married, they're just doing their thing, the house was just so big, and so we had our houses here in Maryland. We just moved back into the one that we lived in right after I got out of law school. So it's kind of like coming back home. But the town here, we've been in the town, we've been knowing people and being around for 20 years. In fact, today is the exact 20th. I think we closed on, it might have been December 23rd. So yesterday would have been the 20th anniversary that we closed on the house we live in now. And that house was built in 1917, and we're only the 3rd owners of it. So it's kind of cool. But we only been there 20 years. But yeah, so like we've been in this town for 20 years. We, even though we moved away for a little bit, we still had our houses here, still know people, and so yeah, it's nice, being in a place where you can get, who to call, I guess you'd say. So anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Merry Christmas to everybody. Please be safe. I know there's a huge urge to get home for the holiday or for Hanukkah or for Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever it is, just being with family. But you know, if you end up in a ditch, it's going to really delay your trip. You know, a lot of flights are delayed, so there are going to be some people trying to get on the roads. I just think, you know what? Christmas is just a construct in a way. It's just a day that somebody picked. We all know that the Savior wasn't born on December 25th, right? The winter solstice was the 21st. The pagans started celebrating by putting up Yule logs and Christmas trees, and that's how this whole thing came about. And it, you know, and I mean, let's be candid. It's, you know, it's just a big holiday for a lot of people, and it means a lot. But you could celebrate Christmas any day, because we're, you know, I mean, if you really want to celebrate the birth of the Savior, you'd celebrate it around the springtime, right? Because his parents were going back to Bethlehem to pay their taxes, right? Or were they going to, no, they were going to Nazareth. No, wait. He was born in yeah, but they were going to pay their taxes. Tax time is the same as it's always been, right? It's in the spring. So anyway, Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. You know, happy winter solstice. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.